Around a year ago, Warframe received the 1999 update. God, time is moving quickly. Anyway, with this update, Warframe expanded with an entire new tileset, a new cinematic quest, a new syndicate, proto-frames, and the list goes on. Included on this list were 2 reworks for older Warframes, namely Nyx and Trinity. Today I want to discuss a Nyx build that should just not exist, and I have to be very careful in how I word things. So let's dive in and let me introduce to you the DLAYS Nyx build. While you break your brain trying to figure out what in the world that acronym stands for, I will recap a simpler time of when Nyx received her rework, and quite a bit of things were changed. For instance, you could now move while using her 4th ability Absorb. You could charge up damage on your mind control targets. Her passive now synergized with Radiation. Her 2nd ability could strip enemy defenses, including even Overguard, and as a whole she became a much more reliable frame to play. Her augment Assimilate, which already made you practically invincible on lower levels, got reworked, where you now had to keep up with a consistent energy drain instead of draining energy per 1000 damage received. This originally made Assimilate pretty useless in really high levels due to the sheer amount of damage enemies start bombarding you with. The big oopsie Digital Extremes made, however, was then keeping the infinite duration of Assimilate and adding even more movability to it, now also allowing you to jump and wall climb. This practically makes Nyx unkillable as long as you can keep up with the energy drain, which was doable, but nowhere near as easy as it is currently. Let me explain. With the Phallus Undermined update we got just a couple of months ago, we got access to Nokko's brightbonnet ability as a subsume. Brightbonnet gives both a buff to your ability strength and allows you to restore energy within small intervals, or immediately if you bounce on the mushroom. The thing is that this even works when you have channeled abilities activated. Normally when you would channel an ability and would drop something like an energy pad for energy, it would not restore any energy to your energy pool. However, brightbonnet just does not give a rat's arse and just immediately gives you back the energy. What's even funnier is that the amount of energy this ability can provide is not even limited. So with enough ability strength, you can easily get up to 20 energy per second restored. Then on top of this, casting a brightbonnet while in your Assimilate will even give you back full movement on your Nyx, allowing you to now bullet jump and slide again, which is most likely a bug, but you know, if I can use it, I will. Then let me introduce you to another fun fact about Assimilate Nyx. When you use this ability, any equipped Sentinel companion will become fully unkillable. This seems like it's not that crazy, but it means a couple of things. If you combine a good enough companion build with your unkillable Nyx, you can now get to a point where your companion does all of the work and you just merely walk around. An example of this could be the Nautilus Prime with the Verglass Prime. This Sentinel has access to the Cordon mod, which with a small cooldown will pull enemies towards you. The main problem here is of course the cooldown, but luckily if we use the mod Manifold Bond, killing enemies with 3 or more status effects on them causes all companion ability cooldowns to be reduced by 3 seconds, which then results in Cordon being constantly activated, pulling more enemies towards you. Modding the Verglass for viral and heat will ensure targets are both weakened and a fire damage over time effect is put upon them. Using a mechanic called Heat Inherit, we can then make this fire proc scale way higher than it's supposed to. I actually explained the Heat Inherit mechanic in my damage type video, which is definitely a must watch for any Warframe player. Combining this with both the Mecha set and Contagious Bond that can cause status effects to be duplicated and spread within limited range, we can create a chaining effect that instantly kills any considerable level of enemies. Or at least, that's what you'd think is a possibility. But no. Digital Extremes has accounted for this and made it so that when your Sentinels have the Assimilate unkillable effect, they will just not attack any enemies. Which, to be honest, is fine because it would be way too overpowered, right? Well, what if I told you there's a solution to this? And it's even more powerful than the Nautilus and Verglass. Just wait, let me call him over. Come here, boy. Come. Yeah, good boy. There you go. This is the Hound companion. Acquired through hunting down Sisters of Parvos, you can unlock these powerful companions that have incredibly potent abilities, spreading a ton of status effects and damage in a large radius. And you want to know what's the best thing about them? They count as Sentinels. Yes, for some odd reason, these good mechanical boyos count as Sentinels, meaning that they can benefit from the Assimilate effect, making them fully unkillable as well. They even have a mod that scales their damage all the way to level cap as it reflects enemy damage coming in. This mod is called Reflex Denial and is a must include if going for high levels. There's also a bunch of other mods that will synergize fully into this build that I will go over in a little moment, but first let's recap what I have constructed for you so far. Nyx can be immortal by using Assimilate and brightbonnet. The Hound can deal scaling damage up to level cap and is also immortal while doing this due to it counting as a Sentinel. Now, the only thing we are missing is a way to abuse the heat inherit mechanic and deal with something like acolyte spawns, specifically violence, right? Violence always costs silence that disables your abilities, so this will definitely throw dirt in our entire plan, and we kind of have to... Wait, what are you saying? Assimilate and brightbonnet are not disabled by violence? Well, I can see why this build is on top of all of the definitely not cheated survival leaderboard scores. Anyhow, the only way Assimilate is actually disabled, apart from violence, is through the Stalker or by nullifier bubbles. So, as long as we have a way to always disable nullifier bubbles and pray to God that the Stalker doesn't show up, we should be okay. And boy do I have the solution for you. Not only will this deal with nullifiers almost automatically, but it will even provide the heat priming we were looking for to abuse the heat inherit mechanic. I present to you the new core. It will auto-aim and chain to enemies when slightly pointing at them. So all you really need to do now is just hold your left mouse button. No easier task than that. Oh, and you know this got even better with the old piece update that we just had? We now have the Tektolyst arcane zid-an, which adds 250% heat to our secondary as well as heat inherit values. Not too shabby. We can also use the new Madurai bow to get small bouts of scaling damage increase, which can also easily deal with pesky enemies like Threx units or acolytes. For more info on the Tektolyst weapons, check out my new tier list where I cover each one of them. Now let's dive into the actual builds and see how it all comes together. First, our Nyx build. I focus mainly on ability strength and duration to get the highest energy restore out of our brightbonnet shrooms for the longest amount of time, and get a nice bonus to our ability strength for Nyx's first and second ability. We of course use Assimilate for the whole build to function, and we slap on the mecha set just for that extra status spreading goodness. Then for arcanes, you can never really go wrong with more ability strength from Mold Augmented, and the new arcane concentration is absolutely crutch for the massive 60% increase to duration it will give, which, by the way, will lower the energy that Assimilate consumes every second. We flesh out the build with a rank 6 narrow-minded mod that we offset by using stretch, and as the cherry on top we use the augment mod Mind Freak. Mind Freak will give any mind control target a ton more damage, as well as an increase to their movement and attack speed, making them the perfect companion for your Hound, while you totally do not walk away from your screen at all and remain immensely focused on your game. For shards, feel free to throw on a Violet shard for energy restore on health pickup, and then use whatever you want in the other 4 slots. Parkour velocity can be great as brightbonnet restores our ability to bullet jump, but distributing between duration and strength from Crimson shards is also a good option. Looking at the primary, just use your favorite one, but make sure you include both Hunter munitions and Hunter track to increase the damage of your Hound on enemies affected by / status effects. For the secondary, you can use the new core, as this one is able to chain through multiple enemies, priming them up with some nice heat damage, like I said earlier. I personally use the Kuva nuker for this, but you can easily use the regular nuker as well. Just make sure that you get the Ruinous Extension mod that expands the beam range. Besides this, even the Epitaph or Epitaph Prime will work. Just pick your favorite primer weapon. Also, if you really want to min-max, equipping faction damage mods will benefit you massively for their increase to status damage. For melee, I like using the Hate with the Burning Hate augment to further build into the big status damage that we want our Hound companion to do. And even better is if you have the Hate Incarnate unlocked, which lets you throw spectral blades towards your enemies, enabling that sweet status damage from afar. But to be honest, any melee you prefer will work fine. In the end, the Hound is the real star of the show anyway. Talking about our good little boy, let's see the build on him too. First, we have the mod Null Audit. This lets Hounds target an Eximus unit and copy their ability for 60 seconds. This means your Hound can now become a Jade Light Eximus and beam your enemies into the Shadow Realm. And funnily enough, you can even get multiple Eximus effects to stack simultaneously. Then there's Seismic Bond, which turns their melee attacks into a small 4-meter AoE. And when enemies are hit, the energy drain on your Assimilate is actively decreased. Vicious Bond will cause any Hound attack, that also counts as a melee attack, to strip enemy armor by 15%. Then enemies recently damaged by abilities, for instance those Jade Light Beams, spread this effect in a 9-meter radius. And yes, this will cause enemies to become fully stripped of their armor. Next we have Contagious Bond, which is the bread and butter of this synergy. We use this to spread up to 100 of each status effect to enemies within 9 meters whenever they are killed by our Hound. And don't worry about getting kills, because that's where the next mod, Reflex Denial, comes in. I mentioned this mod before, but it is able to absorb and reflect enemy damage dealt to the Hound in a 12-meter radius around it. And when we get to the really high levels, where enemies start dealing millions of damage, well, we will be dealing billions back to them instead. We also have Synergized Prospectus, which has a 30-meter range and is able to chain an electric spark up to 7 times, dealing damage to enemies in a 10-meter radius. This can also, by the way, trigger Archon Stretch. Next is a must-have mod to make this Hound build fully functional. Manifold Bond will do 2 very important things. First, it is able to apply any status effects from your Hound's weapon to your Hound's abilities. This includes all abilities. All Jade Light Beams from Null Audit, all sparks from Synergized Prospectus, all reflected damage from Reflex Denial, literally any damage done by your Hound's abilities will now also use the status effects on your Hound's weapon. And guess what? The next mod, Momentous Bond, will grant a totally random 120% buff of any status type to your companion for the next 30 seconds after you kill an Eximus. And this does not even have to be triggered by your Hound. You yourself can also take down an Eximus unit to activate this mod. What this ultimately means, however, is that now every single ability the Hound can do is able to deal practically every status effect in the entire game, which is just all kinds of broken. Then we close out the Hound build with an old reliable combo, which is Animal Instinct to see where we have to go, to use our vacuum to gobble up all of that juicy loot that the Hound will leave scattered on the floor for us. And finally, last but definitely not least, the weapon we can use on our Hound. You can pick either the Akaton or Lacerton, and I went with the latter. For min-maxing, we built the Lacerton with a faction damage mod. But if you really do not want to use any faction damage mods, you can use anything that you want here. Just make sure that you keep the heat, magnetic and viral status damage combo. Lasting Sting is on here to make sure that our status effects last for a long amount of time, and Melee Elementalist is the final way to increase the already massive status damage that will be released upon our opposition. Finally, if you want, you can use the Arbucep Archon to double the effects of the brightbonnet shrooms by shooting at them. This is completely optional, but can be nice. Besides this, you can also consider Specters like a Dante Specter for even more status damage, a Nidus Specter for more ability strength, or a Citrine Specter can be nice too for an increase to status duration. The focus school can be anything you want, but I went with Madurai. I also used Madurai's new Tektolyst weapon called Thara, and I included the arcane Zid-an Uskos to give our Heat Primer secondary another 250% buff, as I mentioned earlier. The Tauron Strike from Thara will deal immense scaling damage and is able to take out acolytes almost instantly. Besides this, it also gives a 50% buff to ability strength for 30 seconds when you hit targets with the initial rain of arrows. With all of that discussed, this is now the fully fleshed out build, and now it is just up to you to go into a survival, find a nice place to stand, walk around, and continue to definitely look at your screen. DE, please fix this build, it ruins the prime part economy. Disclaimer, not looking at your screen means you should still be touching your keyboard to play the game. I'm not responsible for anyone getting possibly banned using this build, and I do in no circumstance condone leaving from the mouse type builds. Terms and conditions apply. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure to like it and possibly check me a subscription. Loads of more Warframe content can be found on my channel and will be coming in the future. Also, I will leave a link to the original video that inspired this entire mental episode in the description. Please leave a comment on it saying DLAYS or something funny. Also, please fill up my Discord and cure my loneliness. And with all of that being said, I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.